Hello, and welcome back to the Caregivers Journal podcast, where we're talking with real caregivers about their caregiving journeys. Welcome back to the Caregivers Journal, where we're sharing caregiver stories from real caregivers. I am your co-host, Lance A. Slatton, and I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, as always, Christina and Cindy
Hardin-Weiss.
Welcome, ladies.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Yes.
Good to see you again, Lance.
Absolutely.
It never feels like once a month is enough, guys.
Right. It doesn't. It really doesn't. We always find ourselves going, I wonder what Lance is doing now.
There's lots of stories out there. We should be doing more.
That's right.
Well, today we're honored to be joined by Kathleen Quinn. She is the owner of K-Inspired, as well as the founder of the Mobility Towel. Welcome, Kathleen. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege and honor for me to be joining to share my caregiver journey.
Wonderful. You know, I just mentioned you are the founder of the owner of K-Inspired, but the founder of the Mobility Towel, which I'm assuming is like the product from K-Inspired. But as a working professional and a caregiver, how did you juggle the demands of both roles, and what strategies did you find were most helpful when you needed to employ having some of your own, self-care and, your own well-being?
Yeah. It was difficult. This is going to sound really crazy, but it was difficult at times and easy. I was very fortunate in my work in that I had a great job and loved what I did. And so in some ways, my work was also some self-care. I was able to get away and be around young college students who were active in their lives and kind of live vicariously through them and share their experiences. So that part was good, but it was tough at times because, that space in between your ears when you're saying I should be doing this, but I should be doing that, can weigh heavy at times. And you want to be all things to all people and do it exceptionally well. And that's not possible when you're balancing all those demands. And so really for me, managing things is all about expectation and how you communicate those expectations, whether it's with your employer and my supervisor, and making sure that we were on the same page and understanding I understood their expectations and made sure that I was communicating some of the challenges that I was having. If I needed to come in late, that it wasn't I was just oversleeping. It's because I may have been up all night doing something. So my grandfather used to always say a good understanding goes a long way. And so just making sure that there was an understanding of the expectations, both at work, but also, at that time with my mom and my other family members who we were all sharing and caring for my mom. And you never want to disappoint someone when they're expecting something for you to do something that you never knew you were expected to do. And so just really making sure that there's a good understanding. And for me also, one of the things that I did each night was I found at least 20 minutes to go out for a walk. And that was kind of just my alone time, clear my mind and think about things, think about nothing, listen to something, just making sure I had that time.
Sure. Did you ever think you would be a caregiver?
I've had previous conversations about that, and I don't know that I ever really consciously thought that, I guess I'm considered a caregiver, or I'm going to be a caregiver. It was just something for me that you just did. Like my mom needed help, and so you just naturally do. So I never consciously thought that, hey, I'm going to be a caregiver.
Right. I know, for me personally, when I was a caregiver for my father, unexpectedly, I was a newlywed, and it was only going to be for a few weeks. It ended up being like 2.5 years, 24/7 care. But during that whole time, I never thought of myself as a caregiver. I just thought of myself as a son helping my dad, and I think that's the situation a lot of caregivers find themselves in. You don't plan for it. it just happens, but then you don't think of yourself in that role. You just think, okay, this is what you do because it's a loved one or a parent or a spouse or a child. So I was just curious because, you know, I haven't found anybody yet that has said, you know, I was preparing for the day, you know. So, but talking about caring for a loved one with a chronic illness, I think we all agree can be emotionally draining and even physically and financially draining. How did you cope, though, with the emotional challenges, and what resources and support did you find that helped you the most during those difficult days? Because caregiving also isn't always up and down or down. Sometimes it's a lot of ups, and sometimes the ups stay for a while, then all of a sudden it's a dramatic drop. And I think especially when it's a loved one, you're dealing with a different aspect of your human emotion. You know, I could care for my dad and it didn't really bother me. But when I saw him starting to digress even more and more, then, you know, just your own self, you know, awareness says, okay, it's getting really serious. Then it became a lot more emotional. So for me, the emotional part wasn't there till like the later months. How did you navigate that? And what did you find for you that was most helpful?
Yeah. So for me, it was, I think I do, sometimes it's good and sometimes not so good because I can avoid, but I think I do a pretty good job of compartmentalizing things. And like you, there were just things that needed to be done that you just do. And I think the emotional part was more just in the relationship, and I wanted her to be comfortable. My thought was, when you're caring for someone who can't do for themselves, even the little things of, can you get me this? It's hard to ask, and you don't want to keep asking. So my frame of mind was, how can I anticipate what she needs so she doesn't have to ask for everything? It can just be there. I know she does this, so I want to make sure that that is just within hand's reach so she doesn't have to ask for it. And I think that helped me too emotionally to not always have to be asked, but to know that she didn't have to always ask for something. So that was one aspect. The anticipation helped me emotionally. I'm pretty even keel most of the time. People will say, you know, oh, you could win the, you know, $1 million lottery, and in casual conversation, just say, oh, by the way, yesterday I won the lottery, and just keep moving along. You know, I'm not that excitable or anything. And so I think I kept things pretty calm, and it probably wasn't until after she passed, and not even right after she passed, because there were things to manage and things to, you know, the estate to settle, all that stuff you have to take care of, that I really had time to think and reflect. And over the years, so my caregiving journal with her as a kid, so she had rheumatoid arthritis. So as a kid, we saw her, you know, limited in what she could do, but it didn't really mean much until she started having her, you know, hip replacements and hip revision surgery, and, you know, it started aging a little bit, that she got more limited. And then on top of the arthritis, she had what they call an AVM, an arterial venous malformation, and essentially a brain hemorrhage, I guess, aneurysm, I guess. And at that point, we did not know. She was in the hospital. When we got there, they didn't know if she was going to make it through the night. They ended up doing surgery and, you know, had a trach, and just, you know, when you'd go in and you'd see that blank stare when someone's looking at you, but they're really not there. And they didn't know what her mental capacity was going to be after that, or what she'd be able to do. And she, you know, came home after a month, and I took family leave then to help take care of her. But she had balance issues, and just really, you know, wasn't able to do much at all, and it affected her taste and all of that. And so trying to find something that she could even eat and enjoy. You know, we joked, we were blessed because she had a wonderful sense of humor. So even in her, struggles, I can remember one time making her breakfast and bringing it to her, but because of the part of the brain that was affected, she usually got sick and gave me back what she had for breakfast. And so we joked about, not liking what I cooked for her, and, she'll do her best to keep it down and things like that. So, and that could be really emotional, but it was more just we joke, it's what is. This is what we're dealing with, and we just have to figure things out from here. So, like you, the emotional part of it didn't seem to be a huge factor, or I didn't let it, or I buried it, all of those things. So, but I think for some, depending on your other supports and resources that you have, I'm again very blessed to have a pretty supportive family. At that time when my mom was suffering from her AVM, my dad was still with us, and he was able to help some, which gave me the time then to get out every night to go for a walk and take my time. I wasn't really aware of a lot of external resources at the time. I am now and able to help with family members a lot because of Cindy and Christina and Adaptive Equipment Corner and the resources and videos they provide. But, some challenges with the health system and all of those things. But
Sure. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about some of the most significant practical challenges that you encountered in caring for your mom. And, I did forget to mention that you're also a current caregiver now for your aunt. And, maybe the ladies will get into that a little bit more, because your mom didn't have any cognitive issues where your aunt does. And that's almost like learning to be an entirely different caregiver at times, I'm sure. But what were some of the most significant practical challenges that you encountered caring for your mom, and how were you able to overcome them?
I think of some after she had her, she, toward the end, in addition to the AVM, rheumatoid arthritis, she was diagnosed with multiple myeloma and had a stem cell transplant, and had come home, but was very, very weak, in a 2-story house where we have a half bathroom on the main level, hospital bed, everything on the first floor. And just to shower, there's, again, trying to anticipate and know what I enjoy every morning is being able to take a shower and warm water running, just running over you, and trying to figure out how are we going to be able to provide an opportunity for her to shower.
Yeah.
At first, we were not very safe. We tried getting her upstairs, and that was an all-day affair and was not a safe thing to be doing and was never going to happen again. And so, one of the things we could have done the bed bath type thing and all of that, but there's nothing like real running water. I ended up buying a camping latrine tent, and I put that on the back porch. And then I ran a hose from the sink in the laundry room out to the back porch, put a shower head on the other end. And
now, would that be in the winter also, Kathleen?
It was in September.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
So it wasn't terribly cold out, but it was just one step down that we could get her down. She could get in the tent and have her privacy and have running water. And so that was one adaptive thing that we did to modify to be able to take a shower.
Real quick before we go to Cindy and Christina, I just want to ask 2 quick questions. One, if you could go back and talk to yourself at the very beginning of caring for your mom, what do you know now, or what have you discovered or learned now that you would have benefited from back then?
I think for me, really understanding that the guilt, of doing more, doing the right thing, really understanding that I did my best. We did our best to provide her with the best care. And our best on some days may have been different than on other days.
Yeah.
That's one thing, that the guilt is always going to be there. You just gotta know you're doing your best.
And
And I think the other thing I was going to say, and this may seem different, but I wish I would have had more conversations. We had some really good conversations, but I wish I would have dug deeper to really find out how she was feeling. You know, there were different stages. I mean, caring for somebody in a recovery for after surgery, you know, can be a temporary caregiving time. Caring for somebody who's had a stem cell transplant, that you've had ups and downs, and knowing that they have cancer and there may be end of life coming soon, that's when I wish we had some good conversations. I wish I would have dug deeper to really understand what she was thinking about, how she was feeling, and that type of thing.
you know, your experience led you to creating the mobility towel. We'll have the link in the show notes. We have a wonderful video that the ladies provided for our caregiver tip of the month from Cindy and Christina at Adaptive Equipment Corner. But what is one thing you would want a brand new caregiver to know today that you think will help them throughout their caregiving journey? And then we'll go to Cindy and Christina.
I'm trying to figure out how I can say. There's a couple things that come to mind real quickly.
Say a couple, that's fine.
Okay. So I go back to that, managing your expectations of what you can do, what your limits are, and really understanding that you can't do everything. You can do everything for a short period of time, but it's not a sustainable or healthy model. And that, you know, you care, you love, you're doing the best you can, and know that that's enough.
I love that advice. I tell families all the time, we own a home care company, and there's a lot of self-guilt, and it's usually self-imposed also. Not always, but most of the time. And I tell them, no matter what decision you make, you're making it out of love. That could never be the wrong decision.
Right.
So thank you so much, Kathleen, for what you're doing and for bringing Mobility Towel to caregivers everywhere to help make things easier on them, because all caregivers need a little help. Cindy, Christina?
Yep.
Yeah.
So Kathleen, I want to kind of go back to, you had mentioned about making that kind of makeshift bathroom or shower out outside or in that little tent. So were you, what was the living arrangement like at that point in time? Were you still at home? Were you living in your own place and you were coming to the tent?
No, she had actually come back from Florida to have a stem cell transplant. So we were together, and she was here, and I was 24/7.
Okay, so living in your home as an adult child. Okay.
Right.
What were there other adaptations or modifications that you had to make to your home, and what was how did that, though, making those modifications as the caregiver, how did that impact your life?
Yeah. That's hard to say, because I feel like it just becomes for me, it just became part of my life, you know. Yeah. I was very fortunate with my work and having some flexibility to be able to do what I needed to do. I had taken time off to be able to provide care. And so it was just for me, it didn't seem like a disruption. It was just a change in focus for the day or for the week, or, you know, for that time. Other modifications I made, and I'm a do-it-yourself. I guess I just think I may not always do it the right way, but I'll tinker. You know, she was downstairs, living primarily on one floor. I had to take the door off the bathroom because the wheelchair would not go through the door. It wasn't wide enough. So ended up doing that, and then just put shower curtains up over the living room so she could close off and have a private bedroom where she wasn't, the focal point, everybody walking by. Not that there were a lot of people, but when she was resting, if people came to visit or do something, it was nice to not have to see her laying in bed sleeping. And then, shower curtain over the bathroom door because there was no door anymore. A wheelchair ramp if we were able to, when we had to take her out to doctor's appointments and things of that sort. So they were mainly physical because she wasn't able to get up to her regular bathroom or anything. I didn't have to deal with modifying the bathroom. I'd already had in the bathroom downstairs, as she called it, we'd already had high-rise toilets put in. So that was something that had already been done.
Okay, cool. Very interesting. So Lance had mentioned earlier that you were a caregiver for your mom, but also you are currently a caregiver for your aunt. And your mom was cognitively intact, which we had talked before we came on here that might have made it a little bit easier for you because she was still able, for the most part, up until a certain, able to make her own decisions about appointments and treatments and stuff. But your aunt, who doesn't live with you, you have to travel to see her. She is living with dementia. Right. Can you kind of explain to us or tell us what was it like caring for somebody that was more cognitively intact versus, and now not only your aunt living with dementia, but now she's further and you have to travel to her, which I think kind of compounds that maybe possible confusion with her dementia, seeing you sometimes and not seeing you other times. And I believe you also mentioned that you made that decision to have her move into an assisted living facility. So can you speak to that difference?
Yeah. A huge difference. How do you reminisce with someone who has a difficult time communicating? Everything that you you can't, it doesn't work. So with my mom, we were very fortunate. As you said, she was cognitively with it. She was blessed with a wonderful sense of humor. And, one morning I'm getting her up, we're getting ready for a doctor's appointment. And literally she stands up, I turn around and she did a little spin and went to the ground, and it scared me to death. Yeah. And, she made, her first response is, well, at least I didn't spill my coffee everywhere. Like it's a funny thing. I'm okay. Just, so that was great. With my aunt, she doesn't, when she first started progressing, it was little things and she was living by herself, let me give a little perspective. So it was July of last year. So July of 23 that we moved her into a memory care facility. In March of 23, we needed to really have somebody living with her. She needed to be with somebody because she was a wanderer and just didn't know really. She knew who you were and could communicate and things like that. But for safety reasons, we needed to have somebody with her. That was March. Prior to that, she lived, I do have a condo next door to where she lives, like knock on the wall next door to her. So my sister was in my condo helping, really caring for my aunt and made her meals and, took her to where she needed to go and all of that. Then we started noticing more and more. So I had cameras. I got some cameras and I put it in her living room so we could at least see when she was up and moving, and then put the alarms on the door. So when she opened the door, an alarm would go off and we would be notified and, at least alerted. I shouldn't say notified. We'd be alerted if she had gone out. Mm-hmm. But as we're progressing through, the hardest decision I've ever made, my sister was down there, and you talk about guilt, I had talked to my aunt. She's my godmother, and we were very, very close. And we had a close family friend who She never married, didn't have any kids, and I took care of all of her stuff, and she had dementia. And so my aunt was very close with her. And so we saw her go through all that, and she passed in 2020. And so my aunt and I had a lot of conversations about, if that ever happens to me, or, I want this. And we did have some good conversations. So I knew kind of what she wanted. And I promised, she said, if that ever happens to me, don't put me, because we had to move Libby to a facility as well. And I promised her that we would take care of her as long as we could.
Yeah.
Right.
Keep her at home as long as we could. And so my sister and I were really her primary caregivers, really my sister, because she had moved down there to help. And so we would tag team it. When she needed to come home, which was in St. Louis for her, then I was down there caring for my aunt. So it was one of us down there all the time. But the challenge has come. My aunt now doesn't know who we are. She has no clue, and she's having more trouble verbalizing and understanding what's being done. But that stage in between, you talk about the guilt, just riding that morning when we were taking her, my cousin and I took her to the facility, and, where are we going? You're going to go see some new friends, and you just feel like you're always lying. And grappling with that, you talk about an emotional toll. That does take an emotional toll on someone. That one was, there was a lot more emotional struggle dealing with my aunt and figuring out her care than there was the physical part, because I guess I never really gave it much thought, Lance, until you asked that question. I guess being able to have that conversation and that relationship and understanding of what's needed and what my mom wanted and things like that really does make a difference. But the dementia and not being able to have those conversations or really have her understanding and knowing what she was like, and seeing her do some things that she would be mortified if she knew she was doing them. Still, it tugs at the heart, and trying to figure out, what do you do?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So as far as caregiving, we know caregiving obviously takes its toll emotionally and physically and stuff. But I think something that we tend to overlook is the financial part of it. Cindy and I get people that will reach out to us and say, I wish I would have known that you guys talk about this adaptive equipment to keep my loved ones safe before, when I was caregiving, because they're like, when I brought my mom home or my parent home, I just went out and bought everything that I thought I needed. And it turns out there was a lot of stuff that I didn't need. So caregiving can also be really hard on your pocketbook. It can be hard financially. So can you speak to that, to the financial part of it? Like, with having your mom in your house now, and, or maybe now that you're traveling to see, and to caregive to your aunt and stuff. Can you kind of speak to that? And are there any resources that you would recommend or that you found in your journey?
Yeah. I would say for my mom, hers were primarily some adaptive equipment, the standard wheelchair, raised toilet seat, bath, shower chair, those types of things. And I think I was just curious. I was the kind of nerdy one. So when my mom first had her very first hip replacement surgery back in 1984, I was caring for her because of her arthritis. At that time you had to wear this foam thing between your legs and be turned every 2 hours. Cindy probably knows. Yeah. Well, because of her arthritis, she didn't have the strength or be able to turn herself every 2 hours. So I was sleeping at the foot of the bed, and every 2 hours we'd roll her over. And one night about 2 a.m, she said, "Oh, I have a favor to ask." And I said, okay, she said, tomorrow, will you shave my legs? And I thought, of course, I'll shave your legs. So that night I got to thinking, and I'm like, got an idea. Now I'll get a yardstick and tape a razor to the end so she can shave her own legs,
Right.
And of course that didn't work. But she, the physical component was easy. I was always thinking of how can we make things easier for her. So I enjoyed going into the medical supply stores and seeing what all was there. So I was aware of some equipment.
Mm-hmm.
The hospital, of course, on discharge, they give you the hip kit and some of the other things. And so, I'd look at the manufacturer and look up things to see what else was out there. I was curious about that. So, but not everybody is. And, so that's first. She had hip revision surgery, a whole different set of circumstances where you can't even sit up more than 60 degrees and, do all sorts of stuff. And the social worker in some ways was helpful. But because she had had previous issues, I knew some questions to ask, not everything. I wish I would have known about I wish you all would have been around much earlier, because I could have used that information. The way we took my mom upstairs to take that shower the one time, it could have been considered elder abuse. I mean, we were not smart about how we carried her up there and got her down. So, as we say in our family, not a good idea. Not a good idea. So those resources, I think now that caregiving is coming to the forefront of so many things, there's a lot more awareness and people doing, your podcast is educating so many people, and Adaptive Equipment Corner is sharing so much useful information out on social media that you have to know what to look for, and you have to have the time to be able to spend and listen to a podcast or explore or be curious. They may be curious, but they don't have time to explore then or do anything about their curiosity.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wish some of the, we know that people who are caregiving, their caregiver recipients, if you will, are seeing some sort of medical professional. And I wish they were a little more educated on what it means to be a patient or a caregiver, a recipient of care, and what that means, and how can we all figure out how to make life easier and anticipate what they need or what information is needed to provide those resources. I mean, the area agencies,
An
I always get that. Area Agency on Aging is a good resource as well. And then for some of the equipment, because of what I've dealt with my mom and my aunts, I've become, from my extended family, kind of the go-to person when their parents were in that generation where I still have cousins with their parents. I become the resource. And I can't tell you how many times I've told people to go to Adaptive Equipment Caregiving Corner, but also the lending closets and your resource for every state, because my cousins are everywhere. That's been incredibly, incredibly helpful. And just seeing what's out there makes you think about things you didn't even think of before,
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kathleen, you, being a caregiver both to your aunt and to your mom, I love how you talk about the fact that your mom was able to she had a wonderful sense of humor. As a caregiver, sometimes it's hard to find those silver lining types of things that happen, and I think sometimes we get kind of down in the trenches and we forget about the fact that we have to find some of that. Is there anything that you would tell other caregivers about trying to, I heard one time, and I know when you're talking about expectations and what the person is expecting. But I think also as a caregiver, and I know I'm like this, I'm very A to B, and I'm very, well, this should look this way and this should look this way. And I heard a saying one time that said, turn your expectations into experience. And then, you're not going to fall short. So is there anything that you would give, any recommendations to caregivers to try to find that experience to hang on to and to find those silver linings when you're caregiving?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to be intentional about looking for them, because they don't always just be like, oh, that was, one of the experiences now that comes to mind, when after my mom had hip revision surgery, she had gone to rehab and then was being discharged to come home. And because she had to be in a reclined wheelchair and all sorts of precautions, I could not bring her home in my vehicle. So they had called for medical transport, and they were going to be there, between 10 and 11, I think. And so, as getting somebody who has some limitations ready takes a while. Mm-hmm. It's not on my time, certainly.
That's exactly right.
It takes a while to get ready. And then they could come between 10 and 11. So she wants to be ready in the wheelchair, ready when they come, we're ready to go. So at 10 o'clock, we're ready to go.
Right.
At 11 o'clock, there's nothing. At 12 o'clock, there's nothing.
Mm.
At 1 o'clock, there's nothing.
Mm.
At 2 o'clock, there's still nothing. And I had been down to the social worker, and, they finally come, and they don't have, their van is not equipped to be able to accommodate a reclined wheelchair.
Oh my goodness.
So here she's been sitting in an uncomfortable wheelchair for hours, and that wore on me. I can remember being in tears too, going down and talking with the social worker, like, what are we doing now? We don't want another night, Anyway, they ended up having to send an ambulance, to get her to bring her home in 5 o'clock rush hour traffic, and riding through the neighborhood in an ambulance, and, all that emotional toll. That was a very emotional day. We have since after that been able to joke about it and talk about that experience. And it's hard to find the silver lining in that day, but we were able to joke about it and get over it pretty quickly, because for some, you can get caught in that space and be there for not just that day, but you can be there for days. Right. And we were fortunate that she was able to move past that. But I do think it is what you said is perfect about making experiences and how you can find that, that I think you got to make those experiences and be deliberate about finding the silver lining, but being reasonable and having a mindset that, I'm taking you to the doctor. I already know, goes to expectations. I know that when I get to you, or even for my aunt, we want to take her to get a haircut, that we've got to make sure we get to the facility early enough, just in case, we need to change any clothes, we need to do anything. So you can't just, have her ready and be ready at 10 to 1 because we have an appointment at 1 o'clock. That doesn't work.
Right.
And then when you get there, especially for doctor's appointments, you can't, you have a 1 o'clock appointment. Well, we all know it could be 2 o'clock or 2:30 before you get in. And with someone for dementia, that's a difficult task, because then they're sitting in a public area, sometimes doing things that they'd be mortified, that they were doing. And then get in and not be able to do what was needed, at the doctor. If it's a test that, now they can't sit still for an x-ray or whatever the case may be. There's just the expectations piece, I think. And and going in with the attitude about it is going to be a hassle in the definition of the word hassle, because things aren't going to go as planned.
Right.
But if you can go in thinking we're going to have an experience,
Mm-hmm.
that mindset makes all the difference.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. With your care, you are, like I said, continuing your caregiving journey right now with your aunt, but what would you say is there any really valuable lesson that you feel like you have learned as a caregiver that you would share with other adult children that are caregivers? Anything in particular?
We've talked about it a little bit, I think, already, and that's the guilt. You're going to feel the guilt is just, I think, a big one, because you're just torn in so many different directions. For me, I was balancing work and my mom or my dad or whomever it was that I was caring for at the time. But I didn't have children to add on top of that, or a husband to add on top of that, and, financial concerns to add on top of that. And, trying to travel between, I was traveling, but it was just me I had to worry about. I didn't have to make plans to take care of kids and all of that. And so the guilt and knowing that you are doing the best that you can and you can't do it all. It just keeps coming back to that for me.
Right.
And just going in with the best mindset, like this, in reality, it stinks. I mean, what's going on stinks. It's not fair. You go through all those. It's not fair. It shouldn't be. But in reality, it's what is, and we have to live with. We have to deal with what is, and not what should be, what could be, what was. My mom, I may have shared this story with you too before, but my mom was always one that was good about, as kids, when we had stuff going on and we were in that, well, it's not fair and it should have been this way and it should have been that way. She was good about letting us have that moment. And I think having that moment is healthy for a moment.
Right.
And she was always good about letting us know we needed to get off the pity pot because we were getting a ring around our butt.
I like that. I love that. I so would have loved to have met your mom.
I do too.
She sounds like such a joy, such a joy. And Kathleen, I do appreciate too, because I think we always need to remember that your statement of, you just need to know that you've done your best. And some days that may be the best is 100%, and some days the best is 25%. But if it's best, that's what it is, and I think sometimes it's hard to, as caregivers, give yourself credit for that. But I think that's a very, very good point. Yeah. And
the other thing I was going to add just real quickly is, we, and maybe I'm projecting, but I carried this a lot. I mean, my family members knew what was going on, but I'm not guess what's going on with me today. And I'm not that type, but it is okay to share your story, because you'll realize that everybody has a story. Everybody knows somebody, that we're not walking this journey alone. We may be walking different journeys. We can have the same ailment, but our experiences are vastly different because personalities are different. I'm fortunate with my aunt that she hasn't gone through the angry or mean stage, and I don't know if that's yet or she won't, but it is very different, and the feelings are very different, and how somebody acts toward you. So we're not walking this journey alone. Our paths and experiences could be a little different, but a lot of people are on this caregiving journey.
Right. Absolutely. We've really appreciated you being here today, and your story, sharing your story. We really appreciate that. Now I'm going to turn it back to Lance here so we can kind of wrap up. And
thank you, ladies. Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us today here and doing your journal entry on the Caregivers Journal, and for bringing the mobility towel to the masses of caregivers and families everywhere. We appreciate it. Cindy and Christina, always a pleasure to see you. I always have a good day after we talk, guys, even if I wasn't before.
Yeah.
Same here, Lance. It's always a good day.
Yes, yes. And now, as I say goodbye to our viewers and listeners, make sure to tune in again next month. But now I want to go to our adaptive equipment caregiving corner, caregivers tip of the month.
Cindy here, physical therapist with Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. Today we're going to review a product by the company K-Inspired called the Mobility Towel. Thank you, K-Inspired, for giving us a mobility towel for this review. If you find this video helpful, like and share on Facebook and Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check us out at aecorner.com. So let's get started. So this is the mobility towel. It was designed for individuals who have limitations in movement, whether it's from weakness, pain, poor balance, or lack of motion, causing difficulty reaching their feet or legs or back when drying off after bathing. So the mobility towel is 100% cotton. It's machine washable and it's dryable. It's got these very nice, let's take a look at this, hand grips right in the middle of the towel. So if you have trouble with grip, you can actually just slide your hands through this and still mobilize it. But it has these very nice grips here. And then at the bottom of one end, it is weighted. So there's 3 ounces of weight on each side of this towel, totaling 6 ounces of weight. And the way this works is with the weight and gravity, the towel actually applies enough force to assist in drying. So let's take a look at how this works. So here's the weighted end of the towel. You can see these 2 soft weights on each side. There's no weight here in the middle. And then again, right here in the middle of the towel is this nice area for hand grip, or you can slide your hands through if you don't have good grip. So the way I'm going to do this is if I'm seated or standing, I'm going to take the hand grips, I'm going to let the weight of the towel bring it down on the bottom of my leg, and then you're just going to pull it up your leg. And again, with the weight and gravity, that's going to give you enough force against the skin to help dry the skin. So you can just move your leg around like this. Now, the other nice thing is you can use it to dry your toes. So putting your foot on this, on one of the weights and kind of working it back and forth helps with drying. I also took my other foot and flipped this other weight right on top, and I used my other foot to just kind of help dry my toes as well. So that's another option. Or if you don't have use of your other foot, use a reacher, something like that. But that's for the feet and the legs. Now, this is also used, it can be used for the back. So the nice thing about this, I really love the weighted end, because if I don't have a lot of range of motion, I can actually take this towel, and because of the weight, I can just kind of sling it around to my back. And with the weight here, I can use the weight to dry my back. So as you pull up, the weights are going to pull the towel back down for you, and you can move that around and dry your back with the mobility towel as well. So that's a mobility towel. We at Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner feel like this is a great product for anyone who struggles drying their feet, legs, or back after bathing, helping those individuals to maintain their modesty, dignity, and independence. Be sure to check out the comment section below for the link to the mobility towel. That's it for today from Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. Have a great day, and don't forget, if you can't do it, adapt it.
Thank you for joining us today here again at the Caregivers Journal podcast, where we're talking with real caregivers about their caregiving journeys. We look forward to seeing you again here next month.